Hello, friends. Welcome to a live stream where we're going to talk about the books I've read so far this month because I am at a lot. I honestly don't know how many we're at. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. We might be at 21. That's excessive. Hello, Kelly. I can see you. I'm gonna click on you. There you are. Hello, Kelly. Welcome. Yeah. If you're here and you're watching and you're in the comments, let me know how many books you've read this month while I figure out how many books I've read this month, because clearly I don't know. So I finished 2 books today. And I think that puts me at 21, but I could be wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Why is this one 20 and the other one 21? This is where we get into the fun part, where we try to figure out how many books I have actually read. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Okay, so we are at 20. We're at 20. So basically we're on track because we're trying to read 31 books in 31 days. This is day 20 and we're on book 20. Okay, that is what I needed. Hello, Sir Knight. Meow, meow, if you will. So yeah, we are just gonna go over the books that I read. Because I don't want to do a 31 book wrap up. I don't want to do a 20 book wrap up right now. So I can't believe. Anyway, that's a lot of books. That is a lot of books. I have DNF'd quite a few. So on the bright side, we've got that going for us. If you see me looking over here, it's because I've got all my information over here so that I can not get too far behind on what we're doing. And I don't want to make this video forever long or this live stream forever long because, if somebody wants to watch it in the future, that would be beneficial, but it not be 300 years long. I need that button. Okay, so we're going to go through these in the order that I read them. Had I put them in order prior to the live stream, that would have helped, but that was not a thing that I did, and therefore we are going to struggle. Okay, so the first book that I read of the month was the Book of Witches. Witches. It was put together by Jonathan Strahan, and it is a collection of short stories. And let me see here. What did I rate that? Book of Witches was a 2.75 out of 5 stars. My review on Goodreads, which I will go through once we're finished and link all of my Goodreads reviews. But in my Goodreads review, I did actually go through and write out each individual story. and rate them, whether I finished them or didn't finish them, because there were like 21, I think, short stories in that. And I think my favorites were the first one, which was by Pete Shelley Clark, which was fantastic. And then there was one from Darcy Little Badger, which was great. Sadzi Hussein, which was a short story, was great. And John Hollaback and the Witch was good. Through the Woods Due West, fantastic. There were quite a few in there that I really liked, but there were also quite a few that I DNF'd. So, you know, it's hard to talk about that in particular. But yes, that was the first book that we read. The second book that I read was The Terror Behind the Mask, which is Creepover, book number 19. If you don't know, the Creepover series is a series of short little mid-grade books that revolve around creepy sleepovers, hence the word creepover. And this one was not a favorite. I gave this a 2.5 out of 5 stars. This was actually probably my least favorite of the entire series. And it's about this girl whose house her dad likes to travel, and he brings home this super scary mask, and it like haunts the family. I don't know. It was weird and not scary, and I didn't like it. Let's see. And then I read 2 books by Phoebe Rivers. They were books 10 and 11 in the Sarah Normal series. A Perfect Storm, which is book 10, and Yesterday and Today, which is book 11. And these were the last 2 books in the Sarah Normal series. And I gave book 10 a 4-star and book 11 a 3-star, because I'm here to tell you the final book really ends on a cliffhanger. And I don't know how you end a mid-grade series on a cliffhanger, but they did. This series follows Sarah, who can see ghosts. She also gains other powers throughout the series. I think the series takes place over 2 years. Her mother died when she was born, and this was a power that her mother did not have, but ran through her mother's side of the family. And so Sarah, her dad knows that she has this power. It's a thing. I don't know. This was ghostwritten by different ghostwriters who are all under the same name. And I feel like they didn't tell the ghostwriter that book 11 was supposed to be the last book. And then they just ended it on a cliffhanger. And I mean, I guess maybe they weren't selling very well, and that could have been it. But like the other books all had like a preview of the next book in them, and this one did not. And so that to me says that was all they had planned. Because like at the end of this one, it just has a page that says every spirit, every secret, every moment from the beginning. Relive her journey. So like to me, that says they planned on this being the end, but it's a horrible end. Anyway, I could yell about that for the rest of my life, but we're not going to. Then we read. What's after that? We could talk about some books we DNF'd. We could do that. Where's my list of things that are actually in order? Because I suck at putting things in order, in case you were unaware. I DNF'd The Bone Witch by Rinch Pecco. Where did I DNF this at? I DNF'd this at the 20% mark. And my notes just says walking away from this one because I'm very, very bored. I read through some reviews of reviewers I trust, and I just don't think this writing style is for me. So this was the third book by Ren Chapeko that I have DNF'd. It is the fourth that I've read. The one that I did like was The Girl from the Well. I actually own a physical copy of that. I really enjoyed that book. But the other three that I have read, I have not enjoyed. So I don't know if I will pick up more from Ren Chapeko in the future. But I did decide at the 20% mark that I was extremely bored. I did not like our main character. And so I decided to walk away from this one because it's a trilogy and I don't want to read a trilogy when I'm bored. Just, seemed like the right thing to do. What's after that? After that was another DNF, which was Forestfall by Lyndall Clipstone. And yes, I am counting my DNFs as coming off of, there's the little thing later where we're going to talk about not counting every book I DNF because I DNF'd some whole series, and I'm not going to count every book in the series. I'm just going to count the one that I actually started reading and DNF'd, you know what I mean? But basically the point of the 31 books in October is to read through books that I have been saving up for spooky season. And so to me, this technically is a book I've been saving up for spooky season, but even though I DNF'd it, I got it off of my TBR. So it counts for me. You may not consider that a count. I do for this specific readathon. I don't normally count my DNFs as my total for the month if we're doing a regular month, because right now I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12, 13 actual books that I've read. So, but at 20 for all together. Hi, Bree. So I DNF'd this book, which is the second book in this series. I DNF'd it at 42%, so I gave it the old college try. So here's my thing. I loved the first book in this series. In fact, I will hold on to it forever, and I will consider it a standalone with a very sad ending. That's how I am going to live my life with this series, this duology, because my notes says, what in the actual Stockholm Syndrome bullshit is this love triangle? Because there's a thing that happens at the end of the first book that I can't tell you about, because if I tell you the end of the first book, then that's a major spoiler. But there's a thing that happens at the end of the first book where one of our characters is taken away from the other characters. And then in this book, they're falling in love with their captor. And at first I was like, maybe it's just them going along with it because they're playing the game so that they can put their captor at ease and make them think that they can let their guard down so that they can get away. And then I started reading other reviews because I was like, surely this is what is happening, right? No, she Stockholm Syndromed herself right into a love triangle with the villain. And I'm too old for that. It's not even a good villain. If it was a good villain, maybe. He's not even a good villain. Okay? DNFs definitely count for challenges like this. I agree. Clearly, because I'm counting them. Let's see. What did we have after that? Ooh, after that we had... Again, I should have put these in order, but where's the fun in that? You don't get to see me panic if I put the books in order. I actually read and finished The Last Word by Taylor Adams, and I actually gave this a 4.75 out of 5 stars, which is fantastic. Now I just need to look up the review and remember why I gave it a 4.75 out of 5 stars. Some things I remember, some things I don't. So this book follows, what is our main character's name? Emma. And she is living in this, it's a stretch of area where it's very remote, and you have there's only one road to really get in, and so there people there are locals. She's essentially house sitting for a lady, and she has a neighbor who lives far enough away that they can see each other through a telescope, And so they like play games with each other across the way between the windows. And he recommends this book to her. And so she reads the book and it's awful. And so she leaves a review of it. And the author writes her back and it was like very, I can't believe you would leave a 1-star review. I'm an author. This is how I make my money. You need to take your review down. And she's like, no, I don't actually, because I'm allowed to leave a review of a bad review of a bad book. And they kind of have like this back and forth exchange. And then some weird shit starts happening. And she's like, is this guy that I left this bad review for coming after me? And I don't know. You're going to have to read it. Maybe he is. I say the most important thing, the very first thing that I looked for when I started reading this book was that the main character, Emma, she has a dog, and I'll never remember the dog's name. I just remember that they call her Space Dog, and Space Dog does not die. And that's an important spoiler that you need. I don't care that it's a spoiler. The dog does not die. Okay, that was the first thing that I looked for in reviews. As soon as I seen the dog, I went, I need to find out things. So now you know the things. I did think it had a little bit of a slow start, but it was, as Bree said, a ride. It was one of those. So like if you read Riley Sager's, which one is it? Home Before Dark, where like you keep thinking you're getting to the ending and you've got the whole story, but then something else happens and you're like, oh, I didn't actually have the whole ending. And then something else happens and then you're like, well, this must be it. And then no, you were wrong again. That's what happens here. In this, every time you think you're at the end, like I guess if you were reading it physically, it wouldn't be so like, because you know, like you've got like this much left, you're like, oh, there's still a lot of book left to go. But when you're just listening to the audiobook, minding your own business, and you're like, surely we're getting to the end, and you look at it and you've got like 2 hours left, and you're like, shit's gonna get deep. Shit's gonna get deep. My what to read list. Absolutely, Regina. That's what I'm here for, to give you all the things to read. The Dog Did Not Die is terrific bit of info. Something I always want to know. Me too. A pet dying is a hard pass for me. Yes. Anytime I see a dog, especially or an animal, especially in a mystery thriller where I know that like someone, or a horror where someone's like going to be stalked or like things are happening in their house, I'm like, okay, but does the dog die? Because if the dog dies, at least if it happens off page, I'm going to be sad. But if I have to like read it happen, we're going to fight. So that's always important for me to look into. I definitely love this book. Had a fun ride. Highly recommend this one. Okay. Where's my pile? There's my pile. What came after that? The chicken or the egg? The egg or the chicken, or the chicken or the egg? After that, I read Extra Normal by Kate Alice Marshall. Yeah, the dog on the edge of death traumatized me. Yeah. And you read it early enough that you probably couldn't find someone to tell you if the dog had died or not, because it's dicey for a while there and you're just not sure what's going to happen. And I had to find out before I could continue. I was like, if the dog dies, I'm just putting the book down and I'm not finishing it. So just so we're all clear. Just so we're all clear. Yeah, I read it as an arc. Yeah. You read it early enough that you could not. There was no one to ask. You can't just like call up the author and be like, does the dog die though? Because I can't keep reading this. Sometimes I really wish I had that power to just like call up the author and ask specific questions. Like, okay, but can you tell me if this happens or not? Because if it does, I don't think I can keep reading this. Anywho, I read Extra Normal by Kate Alice Marshall, which is her new mid-grade, because this bitch be out here publishing an adult, a YA, and a mid-grade all in one year. She was a busy lady, and I am jealous. I gave that a Extra Normal, a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It follows a girl. What is her name? Charlie. Charlie has parents, as most children do. and she has 3 adopted siblings. One is a ghost, one is a werewolf, and one is a genetic science experiment that her parents have taken in. Her mother specifically works with paranormals and like trying to keep them out of trouble, and her father does that as well. And her parents are like on the edge of like so much stress and like trying to save the world, and they're like, we really need this vacation, like we're just not gonna, like we really need this vacation. And so Charlie is trying to hold the whole family together so that mom and dad can go on vacation. And mom and dad leave for vacation. They get to a married couple who are agents that work with their parents, stay there with them. And the guys are like, I'm going to call them like the kids' uncles. Like they know who they are. You know, it's not like they're just left with strangers at their house. That like the guys are familiar with them. And while her parents are away, weird things start happening with these new neighbors that have moved in across the street. And Charlie's like, stuff is happening, but I don't want to call mom and dad because they really need this vacation. And so while all these weird things are happening, Charlie is trying to hold the whole family together to like try to make it so that her parents don't have to come home. She's trying to solve all of the weird things on her own. I loved it. So good. Creepy, because we love a good creepy K. Alice Marshall. It was not as creepy as the 13s, because that trilogy is creepy AF. But it was, I said in my review of Feel Good Stories about how families operate, and sometimes how young kids feel like they have the whole world on their shoulders and their parents don't realize that they feel that way because there's no real reason for them to feel that way. Kids just internalize things that they hear, and then they're like, I must solve all of the problems. But it also was like a viewpoint of Charlie like really caring about her foster siblings, and so it was a really good story. Great story. Love it. There are a few authors I have DM questions like that, but mostly self-help authors. Fair. Very fair. I DNF'd another book after that. Whew. Are we ready? I don't think you're ready, actually. But you're going to get it anyway as soon as I find it. We then DNF'd Just Another Missing Person by Gillian McAllister at the 45% mark. When I tell you that I DNF'd books this month, I did DNF quite a few, but most of them I read about 50% of. So, go me. JC's here. Hello, JC. Welcome. We're talking books. You did not miss the whole thing. We're probably about halfway through my list. Ish, maybe. But yeah, I DNF this at 45%. I have no, so I read the book before this one, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, and I loved it. What did I give Wrong Place, Wrong Time? I can tell you because it's right here in front of me. What month did I read it in? The world may never know. Good Lord, what month was that? Maybe I can't tell you. The world really may never know. It had to have been in August. I don't know. It was high, okay? It was like a 5, a 4.5, I don't know. It was a high number. I loved it. It was fantastic. And I was like, when this came up on NetGalley, on Book of the Month, I was like, clearly, I need to read that. And so therefore, I bought it. And I have Wrong Place, Wrong Time on my list of books. Yes, it was fantastic. Like I said, I've rated it very highly. I can't find it on this list of things in front of me. It's here somewhere. Theoretically. I don't know. Now I want to know why I can't find it. Like, do you ever just feel like the world is against you? I read it in July. February, March, April, May, June. July should be right here. Oh, it's right there. I gave it a 4-star. Go to Patreon, friends, and come back later. Have fun. 2 books on my list because of me. That's my favorite part. But anyway, I did not like this. I actually listened to the first 25% of this book 3 times because so it's like there's all of a sudden I remember there's 2 different time frames. There's like a girl who's gone missing, and there was a girl who went missing a year before, and I couldn't tell you which one was which. Like, again, I listened to the first 25% of this book 3 times, and I don't know who any of the characters are. I can't tell you right now who any of the characters are. I can't tell you what happened in the first 45% of this book. I know nothing. Like, it is completely gone from my mind. I have no clue what happened. Like, it was just so hard for me to, I don't know if it's, I don't know. Like, I know there are a lot of people who really enjoyed this. I know people who really liked the plot twists at the end of the book, and like in the middle of the book. Because I like to read reviews of books I'm DNFing because I like to kind of know like what I'm missing out on, I guess. But I don't know. At 45%, I said I don't know who any of these people are or what's happening. I'm done. So that's what happened. Okay. What was after that? After that was The Haunting of Leigh Harker by Darcy Coates, my homegirl. I gave this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. If you're new here, you may not know, I love Darcy Coates. I prefer her haunted house stories. This was a haunted house story, and it was so good. Legitimately, the first sentence of this book is, "Something lingers outside my room." Like, when I tell you that this book starts off with throwing the creepy right at you, it sure do, because the first chapter is discussing the something, which is a creepy AF thing that lives inside this lady's house that's haunting her. This book actually, okay, so you know how like you read a haunted house story and you're like, why did they not leave? Like, at some point you're just like, why didn't they leave? This book actually made me text my best friend and say, okay, this is what's happening in this book. Okay, this is the situation. This is the type of haunting that this lady is getting. And she knows that what's there is real because the thing injured her and her injuries were still there the next day. And so, like, she knows that whatever happened to her was real. If this happened to me and I call you, will you come and sit at my house with me for multiple nights until we can figure out what's in my house? Her answer, of course, was yes, which I said, thank you, because I want you to know that if that happens at your house, don't call me. I'm not coming. But it's like, I'm the best friend, right? Like, when something makes you look at a book and go, if this happened to me, what would I do? Because it is creepy. It's so creepy. And like, you know, haunted house stories, and like you hear where it's just like, you don't know what's happening, you don't know why. And this lady, Leigh Harker, is really just, she is like set up camp in her living room waiting for this thing to come out so she can see it and confront it and try to figure out what's going on because she wants her house back. And I'm like, I think I'm just giving the ghost the house. I'm gonna have to go live somewhere else. Unfortunately, sometimes the ghosts follow you. But yeah, I loved this. There were some fan-fucking-tastic plot twists in this book. Midway through the book, when you figure out what's actually happening, so good. There's actually, so there's this thing, and I say this a lot of the times when I read these books, that I will get an idea in the first half of the book, and I'll be like, this would be the coolest thing if this happened. Like, there's some breadcrumbs, but you're like, surely that's not the direction that the book's going to go in. But then it does. And to me, that's not like this book was predictable, because you don't actually think they're going to go there because there's not like enough evidence at that point for it to go there. But then when it does, you're just like, this is the best thing that ever happened. Like, I'm not thinking of these things as like, this is probably what's going to happen because they've laid out all these things and it's so obvious. I'm thinking of it like, it would make this story super cool if this thing happened. And then the thing happened. It was so good. It was a great book. It was fantastic. Highly recommend Darcy Coates of all kinds. As Michaela says, always have a good time with Darcy Coates. No doubt. Darcy is the queen. We love her. We'll keep her. We will protect her at all costs. Also, I love ghost stuff, but if my house is haunted, I'm moving. I've definitely had... So my house is not haunted because I live in a new house that we built approximately 17 years ago. So, like, I live in a newer house. However, I have had multiple relatives who have passed away who were cremated, and their cremains have been like in my house waiting for burial. My sister died in my house, which I'm pretty sure nothing weird has happened since she died. Nothing that I remember. So, but I will say that there's definitely been some cremains in the house that when they were here, some weird shit happened. So, but at that point, you're just like, like the TV would turn on and it would turn to the History Channel after my great uncle died, and his cremains were just chilling here until spring when we could bury them where he wanted them to be buried. And it was like, it's cool. The uncle's just watching TV. No big deal. It's weird, but after he was buried, it stopped happening. So it's totally fine. Totally fine. Nothing too weird. Okay. Next book. Book 11. The Witch is Back by Sophie H. Morgan. And I gave that a 4.25 out of 5 stars. It is a romance. I don't know why my mother is yelling in the other room on the phone like she's a deaf person or something. Because she's definitely not. She's just being loud and obnoxious. So sorry if you can hear her. Anywho, The Witch is Back, Sophie H. Morgan, 4.25 out of 5 stars. It is a adult witchy romance. It has a little bit of spice in it. It's spicy, but not a lot. I said if you liked Not the Witch You Wed or The Ex-Hex, I feel like they're all kind of in the same vein of like a book series where it's our world, but there's some magic, but it's more about the romance than about the magic. I actually had like a long discussion in my review about one of the things that people who reviewed had a problem with. So this story is our main character. Again, how will I ever know her name? I'll never remember. What is her name? Emma. Okay. Emma and her love interest Bastian, they were basically, when they were younger, their parents signed a contract saying that when the kids were old enough, they would have like 4 years to get married. It's just the way that marriages are done in this magical society. And when it was time for them to get married, Bastian, he ran away. He just was like, I'm out. I'm peacing out. He runned away. And he has been gone for like 7 years. And then he just shows up on her doorstep one day and is like, yo, I'm here to marry you. Where she has left the magical society completely at that point and has just walked away as much as possible because of the embarrassment of him having left her. There is a lot of society stuff in this where he comes from like a high class society and she's from a lower society, a lower part of society, and their marriage is considered to be like this big thing in their world. Well, it turns out that someone wrote in the contract that if they did not get married, then the person that signed the contract on their behalf would become ill and would die. And so his mother is the one who signed the contract on his behalf, again, because he was a child. She didn't know that this was in the contract, nor did his father, who was the one who signed his part of the contract. Her father, his mother are the ones who signed the contract. Her father is already dead. And so his mother is dying. And so he's like, yo, we got to get married because if we don't, my mom's going to die. And she was like, well, fuck, I guess we got to get married. And so they are like trying to like fake it in front of society. They're doing all of these things. And then, of course, because it's like a fake dating trope, and then they fall in love. You know the things with the things, okay? The biggest complaint people had on this was just the realisticness of their sex life, because both of them have basically not had sex until they're together. And I love that in my review I said, let me tell you more about myself than the internet cares to know. But I'm on the internet and you all are used to it at this point. And you all also already know, if you've been around for a long time, Jessica is demisexual and therefore does not do the sex things. So because when you're demi, you have to have a very strong romantic connection with a person in order to feel sexually attracted to them. And so the way that our main character, Emma, describes moments with boyfriends in the past is very demi-coded. I don't think it's not expressly stated at any point in the book, but it's very obvious to someone who is demi that the way that she's describing it is the way that, at least me as a demisexual, how I feel and how I know others have felt in a similar situation. And so for me, it was like, I don't feel like this is really a problem, where a lot of people really like gave the book a poor rating because they felt like it was unrealistic and because it was pushing purity culture, which I don't think it was doing at all. The society definitely has problems. They sign contracts to make their kids get married when they're adults. You know what I mean? Like, it's got its problems, but I don't think that is part of the problem. I think it's just it's just a thing, you know? The young ones have a word for it. They do. They have a word for everything. I didn't know either until I was in my mid-30s. I mean, I'm in my mid-30s now. My early 30s, it's not been very long, okay? I just thought I was broken my entire teen years and 20s, okay? I just thought there was something wrong with me, legitimately. And then I was reading a book one day and I went, huh, is this a real thing? And I had to do research like a grown-up, and I learned a lot of things. Anywho, loved this book, loved the main character, loved the love interest, loved the main character's friends. I am so excited that we're going to get more of them in the future, because you know it's going to be a series, much like the X-Hex and Not the Witchy Wed. So, well, I know that now, Regina, but before I thought I was broken. I just thought, what's wrong with my brain? What kind of an imbalance is there in there? I mean, obviously there is an imbalance in there because I'm highly medicated, which made me go, did I take my medicine yesterday? I did. Good for me. Anyway, moving on. We're going to move to the next book. Okay. Next, book number 12, which was an arc. The Witch's Back was also an arc. The Book of Witches was also an arc. I've read a lot of arcs this month. It's fine. Book 12 was The Night House by Jo Nesbo. And I gave that a 3.75 out of 5 stars. It was a time. It was a time. Boop, 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 boop. Nickelodeon. You think we'll get a copyright strike? And then have to be taken down because I did the Nickelodeon jingle. Okay, so this story had 3 main parts. Part 1, Part 2, Part 3. Part 1 follows a main character who is an asshat, and he gets picked on, so he likes to pick on other kids to make them feel bad to make him feel better. And the very first scene of the book is disgusting. He convinces this other kid that he's friends with at school to make a prank call to somebody. And while the kid is on this phone, he tries to pull the phone away, and part of his ear is stuck to the phone. And there's like a slurping sound coming from the other end of the phone. And then the kid's like got his hand over the receiver, and then his hand starts to go into the phone, and then basically the phone eats him. And it's disgusting, and I loved it. It was a great time. And then part 2 is something completely different. And then part 3 is something even more different. I thought this was a really good book. I really liked the first part. And part of me wishes that part 1 was the whole story. And I have seen a lot of reviews that have said that. Like, they wish that part 1 had been the whole story. It's a horror. It's got some body gore. The first part was really good. The second part I didn't like as much. And it got really weird in the middle. And then the third part, which the first part is the longest part, the second part is much shorter, and the third part is very short. But the third part took everything that you learned from the first 2 parts and really made it something completely different. And I am likening it to House of Leaves. If you've read House of Leaves, you know that there's a story within a story within a story within a story. And as you start like investigating House of Leaves, and like falling into the deep dive of House of Leaves, you learn that there are people who believe that one of the main characters, that a lot of what he envisions having happened in the house are actually repressed memories from his childhood, and how he's dealing with those things. And that's kind of what you get to with the Night House. But it is a very weird way to deal with it. It was weird, but creepy. And I did really like it. So that's one I definitely say, if you want content warnings for that, definitely check content warnings if you do for horror, because it's got some. Okay. We then read The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones, and I gave that a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved that book. It was so good. So it was set like, what does it say on the thing here? It doesn't tell me in here. It was sold to me as a mix of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Sky in the Deep, which you know what Buffy the Vampire Slayer is. Sky in the Deep is a book by Adrienne Young, which is my favorite Adrienne Young book. So basically The Bone Houses is like set in, I don't know what they call the setting, where it's like, it's not our actual history because it's technically a fantasy world, but like it's set prior to any of like the modern industrial revolution, that kind of stuff. Like it's like a historical setting, but not in our world. I know there's a term for that. I don't know what it is, but anyway, that's what this is. And the bone houses are zombies, and the main character is a gravedigger, and she becomes a zombie killer, essentially, and tries to save her family and her town and the whole world from the bone houses. This is Mars from Somber Honey Books' favorite book, and it is definitely up there with some of my favorites as well. It is one that I will reread because I had a fantastic time reading that book, and there are things that I want to go back and look at. That's one of my favorite things. It's like when there's a book that's just so good and you want to go back and like piece things together, see what you missed the first time. I love that book. It was so good. I'm so happy with it. I want more. So I will be rereading that in the future, and I will look for more by that author because so good. What's after that? After that, we had another arc that I DNF'd, and that is My Roommate is a Vampire by Jenna Levine. Let me look that one up and we'll see where I DNF'd that at. As soon as I learn the alphabet. I DNF'd that at 60%. I don't remember what I was doing, but I was probably doing planner stuff. And I was listening to the audiobook. And in that one sitting, I made it through the first 50%. And Wallace had just finished the book a few days prior. We were on a writing retreat together. So like I already knew how Wallace had felt about the book. And I messaged her and I was like, I get how you felt when you were reading this because it's bingeable, but it's not good. And so it was like a romance with a little bit of vampire in it, but there was like nothing vampire-y about the vampire, if that makes sense. It was a romance, and it was not a good romance. I didn't like the main character. In fact, I hated the main character. She was pretentious. She was a douchebag. I didn't like her at all in any way, shape, or form. My note says, this girl is an absolute hot mess express. I didn't like her at all. She was like a manic pixie dream girl with a self-esteem issue with a penchant for falling in love with a guy just because he's hot. Yeah. They like within moments of like laying eyes upon each other, they're so in love, but they can't talk about it with each other because they just met and they're going to be roommates and he's a vampire. And I'm just, listen, no. The best parts about this book were the love interest, Frederick. He was so funny. So Frederick is the vampire and he had a curse put on him, or like he was poisoned. And it's like he's been asleep for over 100 years. And I don't know if you know this, but the world's changed a lot in the last 100 years. And so like he's woken up and he's like, I don't know what computers are. I don't know what TV is. I don't know what electricity is. I don't know what any of this stuff is. And so he's looking for a roommate to like, so that he can study them and try to figure out like what a normal human behaves like. Because he doesn't want to get found out because apparently there's still vampire hunters, but he just invites some random person to come live with him. That's smart. And yeah, he was so funny. Like he has like Google searches of just like the best things, and he writes the best notes. So he's so funny. Like he was a great character, and that is honestly why I actually sat down after I read the first 50%. It was like the next day, and I was like, man, Frederick, I'm going to keep reading even though it's not good. And I got like another 10%, and I was like, I just can't do this to myself. It's torture. So I did give up at the 60% mark. I gave up. I called it in. I walked away. After that, I DNF'd Witchful Thinking by Celestine Martin at 20%. This was my second time trying to read this. So I had an arc of this. It actually came out September of last year. And I tried to read it last year and I did not vibe with it. And I was like, maybe it's just me. Last year was a weird year. So I was like, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm not feeling it. And I'll put it down and pick it up next fall during spooky season because it's like a magical witchy romance kind of thing. I think the main character is a witch and the love interest is a merman, and I did not like them. They were not sellable as a couple to me, and it was very bland and I didn't like it. So I didn't after that. What's after that? Book 16. Good Lord, girl, you read a lot of books. Book 16 was None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. And I gave this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. If you can tell, the things I've been reading this month have been the mystery thrillers. The things I've not been reading have been the romances. I mean, I did read a couple romances and I did like them. The Wish is Back was really good. I liked it. The Bone Houses has a romance in it. But like the mystery thrillers have really been hitting it this month. So, anywho, I read this. I gave it a 4.25 out of 5 stars. This one is one of those books where you know going in that none of this is true. And so you're like, I wonder what's actually going to happen. And you're getting 2 different sides of a story, 3 different sides of a story. You're getting different sides of a story, okay? There's a lady who has a podcast, and she runs into another lady. They find out they have the same birthday. They were born on the same day in the same hospital, and they are birthday twins. And so throughout the story, you're getting both the podcast lady's point of view plus the other lady's point of view. They decided to do a podcast about Josie. Josie is the lady who runs into Alex. Alex is the podcast lady. So they decide, Josie's like, listen, you do these podcasts about women who have made it. And I have not made it yet, but I am in the process of changing my life. And would you be interested in doing a podcast about me as I change my life? Like, let me tell you my story. My story has got some serious drama. Let me tell you my story. And then, we can have a podcast of like this great story. Well, Josie is definitely had an interesting life. And so we get Josie's point of view, we get Alex's point of view. And then we also, throughout the story, get snippets of the podcast itself, the Netflix adaptation of something, and then also interviews with people, like with reporters about things that have happened. And we know that there's murders, plural, that have happened, but we don't know who has died or who has killed them. And so we're just getting like through the story, trying to figure out what happened. And this book did not disappoint. She did not disappoint. She was a good time. This was my first Lisa Jewell. I had not read Lisa Jewell before. So like I can't compare it to her other work. My note says, I'm honestly not even sure what to say about this book. Part 3 was an absolute wild ride of pieces coming together, and part 4 was the aftermath. But even at the end, you're still not 100% sure exactly what happened because none of this is true. So, like, I know in my brain what I think happened and what I think is true, but is it? I don't know. I don't know. You don't know. It was a time. It was a time. It was good. If you like a twisty mystery thriller, highly recommend. What's next after that? Next, we have 2 DNFs. Whole series. Okay. The first was... find it. The worst part of figuring this out is figuring out where I'm at. Okay, so I DNF'd The Young Elites by Marie Lu. No, this is not part of my TBR for the month. However, I realized part of the way through the month that I have to read 5 books this month for my backlist TBR. And so I was like, you're going to have to go off of your... Also, I am running out of audiobooks. So I need audiobooks anyway. But... so I picked this up. I DNF'd this at 30%. There's nothing wrong with this. It's absolutely fine. I am just beyond these stories. Had I read this 6 years ago and I bought it, I probably would have really enjoyed it. But I bought it and it has languished on my shelves for many years. And I just wasn't interested in the story. And had it been a standalone, I probably would have just read it. But as it is part of a trilogy that I also own the other 2 books of, I was like, I'm not just going to read through a whole trilogy of books that are fine. So these can go on to someone who will enjoy them more. As I said before, when I said I'm counting DNFs, I will be counting The Young Elites as a book, but I will not be counting the other 2 as they're part of this whole series. So essentially this series is going to count as one book. coming off of my 31 books for the month, because had I read them, they would have counted as 3. But since I only tried to read 1, I'm just counting it as 1. And then a similar deal with the next book, which was, I don't know how much of it I read, but it will tell me. Rebel of the Sands by Alan Hamilton. I read 25% of this book. I liked this one better than the other one, but it was a similar vein. I really liked the writing style of this one, but it's, again, not something that I am interested in reading at this moment in my life. Again, had I picked it up 6 years ago, actually, I don't think this one is quite as old as the other one. Had I picked it up in the beginning, I probably would have enjoyed it more. But again, it's a trilogy, and I just I'm not going to read a whole trilogy of books that I'm like, these are fine. I would be more likely to pick this one up again in the future than I would be The Young Elites, because I did like the writing of this one better. But I would have to just really be in the mood for that, like, 2016 YA kind of story to pick this up again. And I also had the second book. I don't have the third book, thankfully, but I do have the second book. So these will, again, count as 1 book coming off of my 31 books for the month. Nothing wrong with them. They're absolutely fine. If I was still into reading this kind of book, I would enjoy it. Especially this one, because the writing is so good. I will look for more from Alan Hamilton in the future, especially if she writes something that is more in the vein of what I'm currently reading. Because you can tell, not reading a bunch of that kind of stuff anymore, which is fine. Our reading tastes change. I know what my reading tastes are now. I didn't know that before. So, and then I read 2 books today, one of which I finished 2 minutes before I went live. So it doesn't have a review yet or a rating, but we'll still talk about it. The one I finished this morning was The Escape Room by Megan Golden. This is Megan's debut. It involves a group of corporate financiers, Vincent, Jules, Sylvie, and Sam. They're all asshats, and they get locked into an escape room, and then all of their dirty secrets start being laundered to each other. All the things start coming up. I gave this what did I give this morning? A 4 out of 5 stars. So this story was great. I loved the story of this. I did not like the characters. To be fair, they're not supposed to be liked. But it's very, very Wolf of Wall Street, like, which, again, makes sense. But, like, they're horrible people. They work all the time. They complain about their families because their families want them to spend more time with them. And they're like, you have to, like, give out 14 grand worth of presents around Christmas time if you want to get a big bonus. And then their bonuses are like $2 million. And it's just like, cannot relate, like, they spend all day, every day at work, ignoring everyone they've ever known. People have to start doing drugs to try to cope with, like, not being able to get any sleep, and they're, like, signing contracts at strip clubs, and it was not it, but that's the point. But yeah, like, as the book moves on, you'll figure out who's locked them in the escape room, why they're there, what they did to get themselves there. And it was a really good ending. I liked the book. I just didn't like the characters, but you're not supposed to like the characters. Okay. And that was book 19. And then let me double check and make sure I didn't miss anything. Sure I didn't miss anything that we talked about, or that we talked about anything that I missed. I think that's everything. And then very briefly, we will talk about the book I just finished, which was The Whisper Man by Alex North. This will probably be somewhere around a 4-star because I did really enjoy it. But again, I have not rated it yet. But this follows a guy named Tom who moves himself and his young son to a new town. 20 years prior, there had been, like, a serial killer in the town, and he was known as the Whisper Man because the children would report hearing someone whispering, like, outside their house before they went missing. I don't think any of the kids were ever found alive, but like their parents had said, like, oh yeah, Steve, before he went missing, he said that there was like a guy whispering outside the house. And so after Tom and his son moved to this town, a kid has gone missing already, and then his son starts to hear someone whispering to him. And so we're like following both their side of the story and also the side of the story of the detectives who are looking for the Whisper Man. And I really enjoyed this. I think it was very good. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. I don't know what I'm going to rate it because, again, I just finished it literally like 2 minutes before we went live. So I will, when we do the end of the month wrap up, I'll have like a number for you then, but I don't right now. So that's it. That's all the potatoes. I've read 20 books. I've read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've read 13 books and I've DNF'd 7 books, but at least half of those 7 books I read more than 50% of. So I'm calling it a win so far. It's a lot. It's a lot of books, okay? And for the most part, with the exception of the first 2 books of the month that I read that were like 2.5 stars, and all of the DNFs, I've for the most part liked what I've been reading. So I've been having a good month. I still have 4 Creepover series books that I want to read this month because they're the last 4 of the series. I do want to finish those. I'll probably be reading some of those this weekend to just get them out of the way and be done with them. I also need to read Title because this is the book I pulled from the TBR jar for the month. And of course, I only have a physical copy. So I do need to do some physical reading. I'm so excited. Not really. But that is going to be it for me today. Thank you for joining me while we went over all the books that I've read for the month. Tomorrow, I will be live at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do sprints. I may hop on early. It just depends on how I'm going with things. But I will for sure be live by 4 because I have 1,000,001 things to do. So if you join me tomorrow, you can do that. If not, Sunday night, I'll be on with Julie and Amber at 8. On Monday, I'll be on Sam's channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tuesday night, I will be on with Brittany Loves Reading. I think it's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It might be 7. I could be wrong. And then I'm off Wednesday, Thursday. And then Friday night is the Storytellers Hearth Weekend Relay. And I'm on like 9 streams this weekend between Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So, and then the weekend after that is the Capture the Words with me and Anne. So I'll be live that whole weekend pretty much. And then the weekend after that is the 30-hour Readathon, which I'll also be hosting sprints for. So basically I'm going to be everywhere for the next couple of weeks and you're going to be sick of me by the time we're done. So you're welcome, JC. Thanks for hopping in. Thanks for joining, everybody. And I will see you guys somewhere on the internet in the next couple of weeks because your girl is going to be all over the internet. I will talk to you guys later. Bye.